to the KWM third Google Hangout. Tonight's session is all about insight. What is life really like as a KWM clerk or graduate? I'm also really keen to hear if our clerks and graduates' expectations have been met. So did what we say during the recruitment process actually eventuate? So that's the theme for tonight. But to help us achieve that, I have Rachel Choi from Brisbane and Sam Monk from Sydney. Rachel and Sam are both currently graduates with the firm and started with us in February. I also have Tim Sullivan. Tim summer clerked with us last year and will be joining us in February 2017 as a graduate. So hopefully between the team, we'll give you a flavour to answer some of those questions. Please also don't forget we can take your live questions on social media. So you can post those via Facebook or via the chat room below. But before we get started, I might get the team to introduce themselves and give you a bit of background. So Sam, shall we start with you?
Sounds good. I'm Sam. I'm a law graduate in the Projects and Real Estate Group at the moment, although I've just rotated out of dispute resolution a few weeks ago. I did my clerkship here in Sydney in the summer of 2014-15, so nearly 2 years ago, and started full-time as a grad in February this year. And this being my first year at the firm, it's also my first year on the recruitment team.
Thanks, Sam. Rachel?
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel in Brisbane. I started as a full-time paralegal in October last year and then started as a grad this year in February. My first rotation was native title and operational mining in the projects team, and now I'm in banking and finance.
Fabulous, thanks Rachel. Tim?
G'day everyone, I'm Tim and I'm a law clerk at the moment here at Mallisons in Sydney. As Sam said, I was a summer clerk at the end of last year for the 2016-2017 intake, and I did 2 rotations, one in M&A and one in DR, and now I'm back as a law clerk in the banking and finance team.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody. For those of you that have watched the Hangout before, my name is Sam Garner. I'm the Graduate Resourcing Manager at KWM. We think we've pretty much got all the practice groups covered actually, so we should be able to give some good insight into actually what type of work you will do as a clerk or graduate. Just to give you a bit of context, depending on the centre that you're in, as a summer clerk, you'll either work in one practice group or 2. So in Sydney and Canberra, where we have the longer clerkships, you'll do 2 rotations, one in a group before Christmas and one in a group afterwards. In our centres that have the shorter clerkships, so Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth, you usually just do one rotation because you're only with the firm for the 3 weeks. So that's how many practice groups you'll go through if you're a clerk. As a graduate, we have a 3 by 6 month rotation program. So you'll spend 6 months in 3 different practice groups throughout the business. So that's just a bit of, I guess, background on how we move our graduates and clerks through the business. But Tim, do you want to walk us through when you were here as a clerk, I guess the type of tasks you did in both your groups, and a little bit of background there? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries. So when my first rotation for the clerkship was in M&A before Christmas from November to December, and I was actually in the employment team subgroup of M&A, so dealing with a lot of the employment related issues that arise in a takeover or a deal. And in that team, I assisted my buddy, who was the junior solicitor in that team, put together a due diligence report on a particular employer, and I also undertook the first legal draft of a franchising agreement for the partner in that team. And then in my second rotation, I was in the dispute resolution group, as I mentioned before, and I was in international arbitration. So obviously a very, very different group from my first one. And that team was focusing on all of the on cross-border litigation disputes. And when I arrived in the team, it was incredibly busy time of year for the team, and they had a major arbitration filing within 3 weeks, I think, of me getting into the team. So it was a real kind of like thrown into the deep end in terms of the work that I was able to get exposed to, which was really cool. And I was pretty much doing quite similar tasks to what the junior solicitors in that team were doing in terms of going through the 200-page statement of claim and verifying all the authorities, as well as assisting in putting together the affidavits for the statement of claim.
Tim, can I ask you, had you worked in a law firm before arriving at KWM, or had you had experience that was useful for you when you got onto the floor?
I'd worked in a smaller firm in Sydney prior to coming to KWM for about probably 6 months or so, and that was in a commercial dispute resolution team. So I was doing a fair bit of kind of court work and drafting of legal documents in that firm, but it was a lot smaller, and I wasn't sort of working on transactions and matters the same size of which I was doing during the clerkship at KWM. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. Rachel and Sam, I might move over to you because it'd be interesting if that work changes as you become a graduate. So, Rachel, do you want to walk us through the type of work you've done since you started as a graduate?
Sure thing. So in my first team, native title and operational mining, the work I did really varied. It went from legal research to drafting and reviewing agreements, due diligence reports, and then a lot of that would involve liaising with regulators and calling government departments just to confirm compliance issues, and also BD tasks when it was a bit more quiet. So what I really liked about that team was the varying kind of work that you would have to do from day to day. It was never just the exact same task every day. And it's kind of similar to when it is really busy as well. Like I think such a small team, so I got the chance to do a lot of work that more senior lawyers got to do as well. And then now in banking and finance, it's a lot more different to what I was doing before. I've got carriage or settlements, which I actually really enjoy. It's a lot more client contact as well, calling banks, which I didn't really have in my previous team. Reviewing transactional documents, conducting lots of searches and drafting legal opinions and that sort of thing. So you get a huge amount of exposure to different kind of work and the different rotations, which I've really enjoyed.
Now, Rachel, I know that often when we say to people that they're going to be rotating through banking and finance, there's a slight look of horror occasionally, because I think people think it's the unknown, and especially if they've done something like an arts degree. How did you find, did you have experience in banking and finance before, or how have you got to grips with working in a group that was new and different?
No, I've very little understanding or experience with the banking and finance world. It's been a huge sort of learning curve for me, I think, especially coming from native title and operational mining and having not had any, I guess, personal interest really in the BNF world, which is something that a lot of people wouldn't want to admit, but for me, it's certainly the case. But it's the kind of, I guess, rotation and area of law where at first it's really daunting. There's a lot of procedural stuff in place and they have their own systems already there that you kind of have to slot into rather than you kind of working it out with everyone else in the team. And so once you've got that under your belt, I think the confidence definitely builds up. And I'm sure, as I did with my last rotation, you start off feeling a bit like, very, very out of your depth and everything's kind of confusing, but within 3 months or so, it really starts to build up. And because I've been through one rotation before, I kind of have the confidence that it'll happen again. But yeah, it's not easy, I think, and especially when you haven't really thought of it before as a rotation that you personally have, like, I'm not the kind of person necessarily that would read the Australian Financial Review every morning, that sort of thing. It's just it's a great opportunity doing rotations, I suppose, to definitely find out more about an area and an industry that you wouldn't have otherwise found out about.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Sam, how about you?
Yeah, so I started in the dispute resolution group for my first rotation. I was in a construction disputes team, so we were working on a number of pieces of large-scale litigation, large arbitrations as well, over mining projects, road projects, that type of thing. My day-to-day involved a whole host of things, preparing briefs to barristers, to expert witnesses, attending witness conferences, and helping to draft affidavits. always plenty of legal research, so researching case law and legislation and writing memorandums and advices to clients. And as we sort of lead up into trial, drafting opening submissions, drafting cross-examination questions that will be put to witnesses at trial. So a real array of tasks. And in my current rotation in projects and real estate, I'm working in the projects and infrastructure space. So there I assist in the drafting of a whole range of different project documents and financing documents. We do a lot of financings for big infrastructure projects like schools, hospitals, rails, rail infrastructure, prisons. Last week I attended the settlements. I prepared all the documents and attended settlement of a financing for a mine. Today I was helping to draft a due diligence report. I've also been able to get involved in the business development side of things, doing some background research for a pitch to a potential new client and helping put that pitch together. Those are the various things that a junior lawyer does in either of those teams.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. We touched a bit on, obviously, depending on your background, whether you've got skills that when you come into the firm, but I'd be interested just to hear what your experience was with the training that KWM offered. So how do you come into a commercial law firm, especially if you haven't worked in law previously, and what training does the firm give you to allow you to actually get on the floor and start practicing? Tim, we might start with you, just of what training you were offered as a clerk.
Sure. Particularly in the first week when we first arrived at the end of in early December, for that first week of the clerkship, there was it was a full sort of 2.5 days of proper training in all the kind of mechanics of the KWM systems, which was obviously the kind of initial threshold thing that you need to be able to do as a clerk. But during that first week of training, there was a few sessions that were quite targeted at training up our legal writing skills and research skills. I recall one particular session that I found really useful, which was on one of the gentlemen from the I think from the knowledge management team here at KWM, sort of walked us through all the clerks probably how to write a proper research memo that would be used for, say, like internal purposes within a team. That was particularly useful for me because, having, as I said before, worked in a commercial law firm for a short time prior to that, but not really having had any kind of hands-on sitting down proper training of how to prepare research memos, was really useful, and definitely something I ended up using a number of times during the clerkship. But more broadly, in terms of the training that occurred on the job, we had, each of us were assigned like both a buddy and a development coach, and they at various points throughout the clerkship would sit you down and provide you feedback on some of the work that you'd done, and particularly on the legal writing that you've done, as well as the drafting of documents. In my first rotation, I remember, because I was in the employment team, which is quite a kind of niche, I guess, area of the law that I hadn't had any kind of exposure to. My buddy booked me in for about 3 or 4 kind of one-on-one tutorial sessions that were about employment law in Australia, like running me through the basics of the Fair Work Act and a lot of the kind of core principles that are used in employment law. And that was really useful for kind of getting to understand an area of law that I hadn't had anything to do with before. I think like the feedback that I received from my partner at the end of each rotation was also like really useful for developing the kind of skills that I would need to kind of continue to use as a clerk and down the track as a grad.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. Sam, I might just move to you now. I know that as you move through the different practice groups, you get specific training by that practice group, which at KWM is called Pathways, but I'm sure all the different firms, have their unique names. But how have you found the training? Obviously, when you're only in a group for 6 months, you've got to get up to speed pretty quickly, and you are practicing as a lawyer. So how have you been supported as you've gone into your different rotations with training?
Yeah, so the Pathways program, as you mentioned, Sam, is that practice group specific training that runs in line with our rotations. So it normally kicks off with an introductory session at the start of your rotation where you're introduced to the type of work the team does, the main clients the team works for, And then you move into a series of sessions which are designed to bring you up to speed on the areas of law relevant to that specific practice group. So in my first rotation in DR, we had sessions on all aspects of the life of a litigation. So the issues that come up, pre-litigation, discovery, drafting pleadings and commencing proceedings, evidence, legal professional privilege, trial preparation. So we sort of got to see the lifespan of a litigation through the training program, which is something that in a 6-month rotation in dispute resolution you may not get to do, given the size of some of the disputes that the firm works on. So all those sort of pathways training sessions are tailored to the practice group you're in. So in an M&A context, you'd have sessions covering things like due diligence, the legal issues that come up in corporate transactions in relation to consumer law, competition law, intellectual property, and IT. So those are the types of things that are covered in that Pathways program. And as I said, it's a great way to bring new lawyers up to speed on the issues that come up frequently in the deals and disputes that the firm works on.
Fantastic. Thank you. I wanted now to move to, I know sometimes we hear that people go, oh, do I want to be part of a large commercial law firm? Do I want to be, a clerk or a grad where there's a big cohort? So I was keen to have a chat to the three of you about sort of the social side and how you've, I guess, embedded into the firm. And Tim, I might start with you. How did you, as on day one, as a group of clerks that come from, I don't know, up to I think 8 different universities in New South Wales, how did you sort of socialise outside of work, and was there a social side to the clerkship?
Yeah. Well, I can definitely say there was a social side to the clerkship. It was definitely, I would say, like, for me, for one, was probably one of the funnest aspects of the clerkship was meeting the other clerks and getting to know sort of 30 other quite like-minded people. And I think the real thing I always say to everyone about my clerkship experience was that I really genuinely just liked everyone that I was working with. They were really decent people who were clearly really intelligent, but also easygoing and down to earth, and were keen to connect with one another and establish good friendships and stuff. I think the way that sort of happened, I guess, was pretty organic. Like there was a number of quite structured social events throughout the clerkship. Interfirm, like as in there was the trivia nights and the interfirm sport and the clerk cruise and things like that, where we socialised with other clerks from other firms. But in terms of how we sort of built rapport as a clerk group, it was there was one social director that was appointed, and they endeavoured to kind of organise catch-ups after work, particularly on a Friday night. Like every Friday night we would go out to a bar round the corner from the office here in Sydney, which is actually since closed. Definitely not related to any, yeah, absolutely not. But we would go there every Friday night and have after work drinks and a meal. And then even on a day, most of the clerks, like a large group of clerks, would meet at the cafe here at the Sydney office and have breakfast. Some would have breakfast together or a coffee and check in the morning, and then often go outside in the sunshine for lunch and that sort of thing. Yeah, it was very, very natural kind of fit. And even within the larger group of 30, there was obviously some clerks that you saw more of by virtue of the fact that you're in their team and therefore going to a lot of the same events often. But I felt like I had a good opportunity to meet and connect with everyone. It was great.
Thanks, Tim. Rachel, not everybody joins KWM via a clerkship program. So what's your experience been as joining as a graduate and sort of not knowing the clerks? Have you got to know everybody in Brisbane well, and how did you do that?
Well, overall, I would echo Tim and say that everyone's super social. There's no shortage of opportunities to get to know each other. But starting, I was definitely quite nervous and kind of felt like everyone would already have found their people and I would not be one of those people because I didn't know anyone. But I found that half the group didn't know each other anyway because they were in different clerkship rotations, or like winter or summer. So there was a lot of people getting to know each other anyway when I started. And when we first began, there was the PLT week intensive, which really was a great opportunity to get to know pretty much everyone. There was a couple who already did PLT, but other than that, but since then, you know, there's a firm social events that happen on the regular, but then we've also got our own grad bonding times that we would organise ourselves. And I find that at first it's really intense. Admittedly, everyone's really keen to hang out and get to know each other, and as work kind of, you know, I shouldn't say take over, but like it, you know, you start getting more involved at work, and you do find, I guess, as I said before, you find people that, you know, you'll hang out with and grab coffee with more regularly. And I think that sort of support from the grad level was really important. And it's that like bond and friendship that you'll form with people happens naturally and quite organically as well.
Thanks, Rachel. Sam, I know the Sydney office probably has the largest cohort of grads starting, and similar to what Rachel said, you may come in from different clerkship cohorts, so you certainly wouldn't know each other. How have the Sydney grads, being quite a large cohort, got to know each other this year?
Yeah, we've got a group of about 30 in our cohort, and as you say, Sam, about, I'd say, half of us clerked together. And the other half were from previous years' clerkship groups or whatever. So it was a new group that had to gel. And I think the induction training program, the launch program, is great for that, because we spend a lot of time together in those early weeks at the firm. We have our practical legal training, so we spend a week at the College of Law together, and that helps us gel and form that bond. And very similarly to what Tim was describing with the clerkship, I think you form a unique bond with the people who you're in a graduate cohort with, and we still go out for drinks once a month together on a Friday evening. A few months ago, a big group of us organised to go to the Hunter Valley for a weekend away of wine tasting together. And that was most of the grad group there for that weekend. So it's yeah, it happens very easily, and just like it was during the clerkship, the group gels very well, and yeah, we get along famously.
Correct. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Now, obviously, I know that generally everyone believes that life is all work at a commercial law firm, and we do nothing but work. And we'll certainly get to the hours shortly. But aside from work, are any of the three of you involved in any sort of sport or pro bono or anything aside from the standard work?
Yeah,
Sam,
I'll jump in here. Sorry. So apart from being an occasional member of the firm's mixed netball team, where I'm not renowned, I'm also on the pro bono front involved with a program through the NCYLC, which is the National Children and Youth Legal Centre, and it's a cyber volunteering program where children and young people who are in circumstances where they're facing some sort of challenge with a legal element to it will email in to the NCYLC a question or sort of a description of their circumstances, and the NCYLC fields those questions, sends them to us, and we go away, we research any relevant law and provide some information to that person to help them address whatever situation they're in. So that can be, sometimes confronting, sometimes, it's very small children with light or comical issues, but it's a really good way to carve a few hours out of your day. About once a month we do that, and to make hopefully make a difference in someone's life and help them address something that they're struggling with. So that's just one of the whole heap of pro bono opportunities for lawyers here at the firm. That's the one I've been most involved with.
Thanks, Sam. Rachel?
On the pro bono front, we also do NCYLC. There's also Rails up in Brisbane, which is the Refugee and Immigration Legal Service, just on the other side of the city. We go there on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and we interview people claiming refugee status and help them with their I I guess their story shouldn't be, the story is not the right word, but putting it together for the application, basically, for their refugee and visa status. There's also the Homeless Persons Legal Clinic, where we help mostly young people at the Brisbane Youth Service, and we help them with any legal issues they might have, which mostly is debt related. It could be also criminal related, which we often can't assist with, but we can at least help them with finding the right help. On the other stuff that we do at work, we've got a whole range of different initiatives which stem from a diversity program that the KWM has. So there's lots of different arms of the diversity initiatives, which we've got the Reconciliation Action Plan, Cultural Diversity, we've got LGBTI Inclusion Network, which for short is LINK, Engaging Women, which isn't exactly part of the diversity initiative, but it's related. So any of those initiatives are stuff that I get involved with as much as possible. But yeah, it's kind of, there's just so many different things you could do here, and it's kind of really hard, I guess, to pick and choose. But you find your feet and you figure out where you want to spend your time and what you want to work on. So yeah.
Thanks all. Well, we are ready for any questions. So if anyone wants to send questions through Facebook or the chat room, we are ready to receive those. But I know we had a couple prior that we received from campus, and I might just start with those first. And I know it's always a hot topic, so let's broach it nice and quickly. What kind of hours have you worked since you joined the firm as a graduate, and Tim, even as a clerk? What kind of hours were you working? So, Sam, I might start with you. Have the hours differed across your rotations, and have they been manageable?
Sure. The hours, I think they're very much a week-to-week thing. Sometimes when you've got a deadline approaching, we do work long hours, and that extends into the evening. Other weeks when it's quiet, I've left the office at 5:30 or 6 every day of the week because it's been a much quieter week. I know it does differ across rotations. The transactional teams from the colleagues or fellow law grads who are in those teams, I know some of them have worked long hours and then hours that fluctuate quite a lot, and that just comes with the deal cycle, I suppose. I think my hours in that rotation were probably a little bit steadier. I guess working till 6 or 8 o'clock of an evening to I guess put a number on it, but it varies week to week. It's very manageable though, and there's plenty of support in place to help to help us manage not only our workflow but also our other commitments. The firm has a commitment to an agile working policy, which I know a number of my colleagues have availed themselves of. I, for my part, am a keen rugby player, so I every Wednesday afternoon I'd make sure I leave the office at about 5:30, and the team knew that I'd like to do that so I could get to rugby training. So yeah, the hours are sometimes long, but there's plenty of ways that your other commitments are accommodated, and it's very manageable.
Thanks, Sam. Rachel, what's your experience been to date?
Yes, I would agree. It varies week to week and also rotation to rotation. In my first rotation, now that I can compare it to what I'm doing now, I would say it was pretty light on. There are definitely times, like especially with due diligence reports, when they're due, it's quite urgent and you kind of do put in longer hours, but generally it was pretty relaxed, and being a small team, the workflow was kind of more controlled, I think. Now in banking and finance, it's quite a bit different. Half the team does a lot of work with offshore deals, so mainly with Hong Kong, for example. So they're 2 hours behind us, which kind of means working a bit later some days in order to accommodate that. But also a lot of the team will rock in a bit later as well in the morning. So they're more of a night working team, nocturnal workers, which is a bit different for me. But it's the nature of the work, and you get used to it. And especially when you have a very supportive team, and like I've got another grad friend with me. We work through it together on those late nights, which do happen. But the great thing is it's not like you know it's not for like a it ends so it's not like all the time, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Talking of the practice groups, I know one of the questions we also have been asked is do you get to select your practice groups and do you have control over which groups you're put in? I'll probably answer that one myself, only because it's usually HR that manages that process. But certainly for clerkships, we will ask the people coming in as clerks what groups they're interested in, and we will always try and accommodate that. And I'm pretty sure certainly we haven't had any issues placing people in the groups that they want. So that's what's happened. That's what happens as a clerk. As a graduate, what we do is we ask you for your preference front. So we'll ask you, what's your must-have group? What's the group that you really want to be in? We'll also then ask you to rank the other practice groups, and we'll build a pathway before you join the firm. So what we found is by letting you know the practice groups in advance, it takes some of the stress out of that. Where am I going to rotate to next? And am I going to get the group that I really want to, that must-have group? So we do try and do that in advance, and we're very aware that, people have certain expectations and the groups they want to go to. However, we mix that with business needs as well, and nearly all rotators will go through M&A just because the nature and the size of the group. It's a great training ground, and you gain some really fantastic skills. So we're very upfront in Sydney that everybody will go through at least M&A and banking and finance as a rotation, but we'll certainly work with you as an individual with regards to the groups you want to go into and what that pathway looks for you as an individual. Same with the settlement process. At the end of the 3 rotations, we want everybody to be able to settle, where they want to. So again, we'll go through a very similar process. We do need to take into account business needs, but invariably, the groups that people want to settle into, they can, and we'll work through people with that. Okay, we've got another question, and it's what I alluded to actually at the beginning of the Hangout. I'd be really keen to hear if the firm has met your expectations. So, when we talk to you either as the recruitment committee or HR about KWM through the clerkship process or through any recruitment process, has it actually been realistic? Has the experience you've had, does that relate to what we were talking about? And the reason I ask that is we try pretty hard to be very transparent at KWM, and we want for people to make an informed decision when they're looking at their clerkships or graduate offers. But be keen to hear directly whether that was your experience. So Tim, you're the most recent clerk, so I might start with you first.
Yeah, Sam. I would definitely say it has met my expectations and exceeded them. I think that one thing that I've really sort of felt and noticed during both the clerkship process and now kind of in this in-between period where I'm a law clerk and going into becoming a grad down the track is that I feel like there's never really a shortage at KWM of being able to speak to someone to get like a genuine and realistic insight into something that you're unclear about. So for me, that and the useful thing for me is often, in trying to ascertain the sort of practice groups and teams that I want to rotate in when it comes and preference when it comes to putting in the preferences for grad jobs, for the actual grad job. It's people who I speak to are really forthcoming and honest about their experiences in particular groups, what they liked and didn't like about them, and that is very valuable to have, and I always appreciate that kind of thing. So I feel like I would echo exactly what Sam said, that KWM does and is always very honest about the experiences, and that makes the process very smooth for someone in my position.
Sam, how about you? Has life been what you expected?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think I wanted to come to Mallisons and chose to come to Mallisons but for a couple of reasons. One was the quality of the work. I thought it would be exciting, and it is exciting to be working on disputes, on projects, on deals that are making the press, that are big, that are large scale, and that's to be a part of that is exciting. The other reason was that I guess throughout the whole clerkship recruitment process, between 2 rounds of interviews, the cocktail evenings, I got a real sense of the type of person that KWM, and was really impressed by everyone I met at those events. And the firm has definitely met my expectations in terms of the quality of people that you come to work with every day. And if you're enjoying the company of your colleagues, which fortunately I really do, then I think you're very lucky. So the firm has definitely met all of my expectations.
Oh, great. Now I'm wary of time, and we've probably got chance for one last question. And I might just ask it to you guys that obviously the recruitment process at the moment states it's up to different levels, but certainly in New South Wales, it's getting close to the crunch part of offers and deciding on which firm you're going to which firm you're going to accept. So is there any piece of advice that you remember or that you went through that you'd like to offer to people as they're going through the kind of which firm do I choose stage? Tim, I might start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think if I could base it on my experience, I think the main thing is to go with the firm that you've felt the closest kind of organic connection with, I guess. And that sounds maybe a bit like intangible or whatever, but for me, I definitely based it on the people that I met at the events that I went to, and the experiences they talked about liking about the firm that they were at, which was KWM, and feeling that kind of sense of genuineness that they were being honest and upfront and truthful in saying that they were enjoying the experience that they had. I was obviously also basing it on the reputation of the firm and the excellence of the practice groups that I was interested in. And for me, that was the work that I knew I would be doing at KWM was going to be, the best, and that for me was a big draw card.
Thanks. Rachel or Sam, have you got any advice you'd like to pass on?
I guess I'll just echo what Tim said. For me, it was the exact same experience. Yeah, I found everyone I met during the recruitment process in the lead up to clerkship season at KWM everyone was normal, everyone was genuine and warm, and that made the decision to come here very easy for me. I think it's, as Tim said, it's an organic thing. Go with the firm that you felt the strongest and best connection with, and you won't go wrong.
I think the other thing I would also add that I was going to say is that especially in that period when offers come out and then you've got a few days to accept or reject them, I think I would definitely implore to people to ask any question that you still have that's unsure about something about the firm. I think just like it's so okay to ask a question that even if you think it might not be, the most like polite question to ask, just absolutely ask it to be able to get the answer to those sort of uncertain questions that you have and make a fully informed choice. And people from the firm side really respect that, I think, and they want to answer those questions that you're unsure about, even if you feel slightly awkward about asking it. That's certainly what I did in that period, and it helped me make the decision that I made.
The only thing I might add, I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far about getting a sense of the people. That's really important. I think that gives you a good indication of the kind of firm, because ultimately, apart from the work, when it comes to top-tier firms, they're all invariably similar. So it's the people ultimately that I think will make you decide where you want to be and who you want to work with, which from day to day is so important. The other thing for me is, I guess, if you are tossing up between whether you want to work for a big firm or a smaller, like mid-tier firm or even boutique, the thing that made me decide to come to a place like KWM was a piece of advice that a friend gave me, and a mentor, who said that from his experience working at a larger firm, actually just for him really built a very strong foundation, which then has enabled him to then had just opened up his world in terms of options. And you can't, I guess, there's definitely that available at smaller firms, but I think it's harder to come by. So when you have a firm like Hill & Mallison's, which has all the resources that really and training that really build you up in terms of professionally, but then also the people who, I know this, I don't know, I'm sure no one in my office is actually watching this, so it's not like I'm actually saying anything, but yeah, people here are amazing, and I wouldn't say that unless I really meant it. So it's something that really makes coming to work, day to day, which full-time work is a big deal for someone who hasn't done it before, a lot easier.
Fantastic. We have just had a final question, so I will just try and squeeze one more in. Apologies. Just asking if there is anything that you would change about your clerkship experience, or I guess your graduate experience. So, have you had any negative experiences, or is there anything in the process that you would have changed? I don't know whether anyone has an answer to that. Anything that you would change about your experience to date so far?
I think it's a difficult question to answer on the spot, but I think maybe not that I would change it necessarily, but maybe try to have done a bit more of during the clerkship was probably not being too kind of shy, maybe in yourself, in holding back when you get to the firm. I think it's really important to take the opportunity during the 2 months of the clerkship to really kind of take every opportunity that comes to you, in the sense of not just the opportunities to go and attend the pro bono workshops and things like that, or attend Clerk Sport, or attend the various events, but actually the opportunities that some people in the firm present to you to kind of meet up and have a coffee and learn about a practice group that you're not currently rotating through, to kind of not be too shy and intimidated maybe to approach people that you have nothing to do with, but you're interested in their work and you want to hear about what they're doing. Get in contact with them, have a coffee and a meet up, and kind of pick their brains about what they do and help kind of learn more about different areas of law in different parts of the firm. Because I mean, obviously, when you arrive in a new place, it's all very, very new, very big, and can come across a bit intimidating. But I would say that in hindsight, there's just no need to be shy about stuff, because everyone is very forthcoming and kind of is really happy to kind of reach out to clerks in that way.
Brilliant. That's a great answer, Tim. Sam or Rachel, anything else to add before we sign off tonight?
The only thing from me would be never hesitate to seek clarification on something. I know I could have saved myself a few hours a couple of times if I'd, when I was sitting there scratching my head over a piece of work, just gone back to the person who assigned me the work and asked them to explain it again. And never, when I've done that, has anyone had any problem with taking the time to talk me through it again. So everyone here is super nice and wants you to learn. So it would be, my only thing that I'd change would be to go back those couple of times that I sat there till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, stressing about a piece of work I'd been given in the morning. Would have just gone and sought clarification straight away, and no one will ever have any problem with that.
Great advice. Thanks, Sam.
For me, absolutely. I there've been so many times I've done that as well, and I think one thing that I thought you can always approach, for example, the more junior members of your team. They might seem a bit more approachable when you first start as well. Also support staff. Like, I got to know the secretary of my old team really well, and she was a good go-to person to ask, like, oh, if his door's shut, doesn't mean I can't approach him. And she'll be like, oh no, it's fine, you can go in. Just little things like that, which really help with getting to know the team better and getting to know how people work differently, which will be the case in every team and every place you work anyway. So it takes time, and you feel really, really good when you think you get someone, but it's all part of working more efficiently and more comfortably as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Sam, Tim, and Rachel. I hope we have given you an insight into life as a clerk or as a grad. If you have any questions later on, please feel free to continue posting them on Facebook. We'll do our best to answer those. But from all of us tonight, thank you very much, and we hope you have a good evening. Thanks. I don't think anyone wants us to leave, actually.
Yeah, no.
We can't.
Keep going.
We might
Another
be
half
here
an hour.
forever.
Yeah.
I know. Apologies all. I'll,
Should we
a
hit
couple
the
of
red
technical
button?
issues, but yeah, hopefully, maybe you can try. My little red button's
Do you
not
want me to
working
try?
tonight, unfortunately. Yes, please.